So thematic paper, 50 marks, 2 hours, 50 minutes to take it on. Timing is something that, again, I'd ask you to put a little star beside where it says 2 hours and 50 minutes there. We'll talk about timing in a minute. But if you have your copies in front of you and you are writing down little notes, or potentially you're using the notes here, I would encourage you, it's not a bad time now at this stage, get all this out in the open in terms of week one, get it all covered straight away, have a copy in front of you. Anything, as I said, that goes on the board, anything that you think is useful, again, especially like the vocab, that goes into the copy, it's worth taking down. One thing I would say that is definitely copy worthy is timing. Now, as I said, we'll talk about that now on the next page, but timing is so crucial for you in terms of your English Leaving Cert, all right? You need to be absolute surgeons when it comes to your time management. When it comes to a particular time, when you know, okay, the time for this section is ending now and I need to stop and I need to move on to something else, well then you do that, okay? Don't sit and say, you know what, I'll give it another 5 minutes, I'll give it another 10 minutes, let me just finish this paragraph. What invariably happens is you end up losing a good chunk of marks needlessly, because you actually gain a significant amount of marks in terms of whenever you start the question, the first 10 to 12 minutes of actually starting the question, you gain significantly more marks in that kind of time frame than you would by using those 10 to 12 marks to continue on something that you've already probably got the chunk of your marks already, okay? So you've already got, I suppose, the marks that you're going to get. You know, pause, stop, give yourself a little bit of white space. It might be a case that you have a little bit of time towards the end of the exam to come back to it, to, you know, reassess that final paragraph that you're trying to write. But as it stands, you know, stop and then move on to the next, okay? So time management, guys, you'll hear me talk about that constantly as we're dealing with each individual section. Again, very, very significant, okay? You can see there, guys, after a little time management, comprehending, which is question A, as discussed, 50 minutes, 50 marks. You can see, again, comprehending, your question B, 12.5%, 40 minutes. And then again, you're composing 25% and then 80 minutes. 80 minutes looks like a massive amount of time for that section. And it is, but a gentle reminder of what we're looking at here. This is the heaviest weighted section in both paper 1 and paper 2. So it's very, very important that we give a good chunk of time to that section. And also, not to overwhelm you at this early stage, but also we're going to try and write a significant number of pages for this task, okay? We're going to try and get to, you know, 5 pages minimum for that task. So we need the 80 minutes. You know, the time frame realistically will be, and I know this sounds like quite a limited time frame in terms of in the grand scheme of things, but realistically it should be taking us about 8 to 12 minutes to write an A4 page. 12 minutes if you're on the slower side of things in terms of handwriting, and then 8 minutes if you're on the faster side of things in terms of handwriting, okay? So that's 8 to 12 minutes is our window, okay? So if we're looking at 10 minutes per page, you're looking at around 60 minutes, 65 minutes, nearly 70 minutes for your pages there, and then obviously a little bit of planning, etc. All right? So again, that's a little bit in terms of the 80 minutes there, guys. You can see question A has 3 short questions, 1 page max per answer. Now, I will ask you to put a little star beside that. The third question, so question 1 will be 15 marks, question 2 will be 15 marks, and then question 3 will be 20 marks. It's no harm if you're going to an A4 page and a quarter on that third question, on the little heavier weighted question. We'll talk about that when we start going through question A in detail, but just 1 page, maybe if you want to write 1 page and a quarter max, just to edit that there in front of you. There will be, as I said, if you want to put a question re-study text, if you want now, guys, in the notes, will you just put little brackets beside that there and write question 2, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So put where it says question re-study text, just put question 2 beside it. And what I would say to that is typically those questions that I spoke about a little bit earlier in terms of on our studied material, typically they exist within the question 2 section, all right? So, and the question 2 part of the 1, 2 and 3 here for a question A, okay? 5 language styles at play within those 3 questions as well. You will take on 1 question A question, and then again, what's worth noting now, if you want to write it down, there's a little bit of white space, top or bottom. You cannot do your question A question and your question B question on the same text, okay? For a lot of us watching at home, an incredibly rudimental statement. A lot of you guys are like, Okay, Cowser, yeah, we know that. Come on, keep going, mate. But you will be shocked. Mock time and actual then correcting the exams themselves, you'll be shocked at the amount of individuals that take on a question A and a question B on the same text. You are effectively throwing away 50 marks, 12.5%. It will not be graded. It's needless loss of mark, okay? So if you select question A in terms of text 1, you'll have a choice of 3 texts. Well, that means then that you can't do question B for that text, okay? So just something to be mindful of as we go forward. In terms of our question B, now, where it says 40 minutes for question B, for a lot of us out there, I reckon that's going to be a bit of overkill. Maybe put a star beside it. I really think, we're going to really try and get 2, maybe 2.5 solid pages done for that question. Even with a plan, and I'll talk to you about planning as we go as well, but even with a plan, you're really looking at around 30 minutes, 32 minutes with the plan for that question B. So if you want to put a little star beside question B here, that might be an area where we siphon off a little bit of time management to read, a little bit extra time for our time management to read over the paper, select our questions, etc., etc. Again, we'll talk about that as well at a later stage, okay? You can see the term functional writing, very important. It would have made a lot of sense to 6th-year students about 3 or 4 years ago before the new junior cert came in. Once you said functional writing to that group of students, they would have known exactly what you were talking about. You guys don't have functional writing as part of, or you wouldn't have had functional writing as part of your new junior cert per se. But it's very, very important to note that term functional. Highlight it now. Make sure you put a little star beside it. Functional is if something serves a purpose, okay? Is it doing what it's specifically set out to do, all right? Is it completing the function? Is it completing that purpose? Feel free to write down the synonyms beside that there, guys. Again, synonyms. Synonyms going on the board. Synonyms will be when I mention a number of words. I suppose when I mention a word, a synonym is, I suppose, effectively another word that means the exact same thing. Okay, so synonyms there again, guys. Functional writing, purpose. Have a little look at the tasks that are there: blogs, articles, talks, speeches, letters, emails. And again, the answering length there goes up to about 3 pages. 3 pages if you have a little bit of time. Again, it's slightly a bit of overkill. We have to play the game a little bit, guys. We have to play it nice and smart. How can I maximize my grade whilst working within the confines of that time management? So 2.5 to 3 pages if you have time, okay? Just a quick look at that as well. And again, this will be something that we do a lot when we're looking at our question B material. Talks and speeches, guys. Blogs and articles, for example, radio broadcast and podcast, these kind of things. These are some of the more, podcasts aside, I'll talk to you about that when we look at question B, but these are the more common ones that crop up time and time again. Diary entries is up there as well, but that is figured over the last couple of years. So in terms of predictions, that would be not one that I'd be predicting for you guys. Predictions immediately, guys, I know individuals watching at home, immediately your ears prick up and you start to think, will we get predictions in terms of poetry, etc., etc.? And yes is the answer. We will go through predictions not only in terms of our study poetry, also we'll have a little look at unseen poetry in terms of what questions we expect. And then also our Shakespearean text will talk to you about what questions we expect to see in the paper and our comparative as well. So we will go through all those predictions, certainly at a later stage, in and around mock time as well, okay? A note on the predictions though as well, again, we're not, as English teachers, we're not infallible. We have been wrong in the past. Fortunately here in the Academy, we've managed to get it right over the last number of years. 3 out of 4 poets, successful prediction in terms of our Shakespearean text questions. So we are doing quite well, and hopefully we can help you out with those predictions. Finally then, we can see in terms of our composition, and again, as I said, 25%, you can see, guys, there's a couple of examples of some of those questions that exist then in our paper 1 material. Discursive, descriptive essays, personal essays, as said, short story essays, speeches, debates, guys. I'm a huge fan of individuals taking on the speeches and the debates because you can be so formulaic. Your approach can be incredibly pragmatic and so well structured that it is impossible for an examiner not to give you considerable marks. So that's something that I encourage heavily within the day school and in the grinds. There's articles there, feature articles, and again the answer length there, guys, 4 to 5 A4 pages. We might consider changing that for those of us trying to get into that H3 and above window. we might have a little look and say kind of 6 pages, 5.5 to 6 pages, guys. That tends to be where I tell my students that's the sweet spot, okay? You'll hear me constantly talking about a H3 and above. The reason why I say that, some of us may be aware of this information, some of us might not be. The most common grade in the country, so nationally for English, is a H4, and the second most common grade then is a H5. So there is this bit of a black hole in terms of English, in terms of a H4 and H5. That's where most students end up. Now, if that is appealing to you and that's your goal, excellent. And if that's the absolute very best that you can do, and you're using these grinds to drag your grade up from a H8 into that H5, excellent. And that's it. That is what we'll do, and we'll try and get you to maximize your absolute potential, okay? And that'd be perfect. But if it's a case that we're going for, you know, the elusive H1 and then the, you know, the very attainable H2 and H3, well then again, hopefully these grinds and these notes will help you guys out massively with that as well. All right, guys, that is a pretty in-depth look at our paper 1 material in terms of the 3 different questions that can potentially come up. You can have a little look. As I said, I did promise that we would go in terms of a little overview of our paper 2 material as well, and considering our board in terms of the plan for today. If you want to have a little look, we'll go through it nice and quickly because it's very important that we get on into the material. Well, paper 2 is our study text, it's our study material. We have 3 hours and 20 minutes, okay? It's a behemoth, it's a significant paper, all right? We have our Shakespearean text or our play, 15% of our entire grade. Okay, we might be looking at another text, so that'll depend on your day school. Nonetheless, we'll cross that bridge when we talk about our single text and our Shakespearean text, okay? We'll talk about answer length and things like that as well when we start to get onto our paper 2 material also. Our comparative, our second heaviest weighted section, 17.5%. We will look at our modes of comparison in great detail, look at the 3 modes for you guys and how best to take on each individual one, how to compare and contrast our play, our novel and our film, and how we link them together. That's predominantly what we do in the comparative. Again, that's going to be a significant task for us, and we will spend, I think, 3 weeks on that collectively together. And then our poetry task, 17.5%. That, as discussed, we're going to launch into that relatively soon in terms of our grind schedule, in terms of our week schedule. We're going to have a little look at that in week 7, and what we're going to do then is we're going to break it down. We'll look at our introduction into poetry, and we'll look at our unseen poetry first, which is 5% of our entire grade, 20 marks. And again, that is something, in terms of just a brief note on unseen poetry, it's something that a lot of students are like, well, we don't actually even take that on. We take the 25 minutes that we're supposed to have for our unseen poetry and we amalgamate it into the rest of the paper. I'm going to hopefully show you week 7, guys, how that is, I suppose, 5% there, 20 marks. That is so attainable. It really is there for the taking. We'll start off with that, and then what we'll do is we'll start to get into our poets. So 8 poets on the course, 6 of which will be covered in great detail between ourselves, 2 of which you will get notes on as well. So hopefully that'll start to help you guys with regards to your study poetry. And what we'll also do as well with that is we will look at our predictions, who we think is going to be the top 4 on the day itself. All right, so guys, put a little star at the top of page 3 there. Really useful just to go back to, just to remind yourself. I know for a lot of us that last kind of 10 minutes might have been a little bit tedious. You know the layout of the paper, you know what you're expecting. However, for some of us we don't, all right? And it would be amiss of me if I didn't take time, pause on it and go through a couple of things with you, okay? In terms of page 4, guys, is our time management, and it's a little bit about, I suppose, our page length and our page numbers. I'm not going to look at paper 2 anymore now. We're going to specifically look at paper 1 and launch into that. Question A, again, guys, gentle reminder, responding to questions in one of our 3 texts. Length is going to be a little over 500 words, so 4 to 500. Again, we're going to push past that. And then again, as discussed, it might be 3.5, 4 A4 pages, depending on how much we're writing, and then the size of our writing, things like that. Question B, again, short written task based on our categories of language, again, from one of the other 2 tasks that are remaining. And again, that's going to be about 2 pages, maybe onto 3 pages. And then the composition, again, is going to be around 5, 6, no more than 6 pages, and again, that's going to be the last thing that we take on in terms of our paper 1 as well. All right, in terms of if you want to skip over, because obviously we're not looking at our paper 2 material. If you want to have a quick look at timing, and I know we had a little look at this already, but top of page 6, guys, I'd ask you to put a star at the top of this page. Might be something that you come back to over and over again, certainly before your mocks, and then again on in terms of your Leaving Cert. As a gentle reminder, what should I be doing in particular areas? In terms of our paper 1 timing, as I said, we'll come back to paper 2 when we get a chance, or when we certainly after our first 6 weeks. But if we have a quick look at our paper 1 here, as we said, 2 hours 50 minutes for paper 1. Where it says reading over the paper and choosing questions says 20 minutes. Guys, that's far too long. We're going to change that, alright? The reason why it's there, it is important to digest and dissect the paper that when you start. However, 20 minutes there, even looking at that as 20 minutes sitting down and not putting pen to paper in terms of your entire Leaving Cert English paper 1 for 20 minutes, that's giving me anxiety to simply even look at that. So definitely not 20 minutes. We're going to make sure that question A has another 15 minutes put onto that. So we're going to change 35 minutes. We're going to change that to 50 minutes. Okay. Question B is going to be that 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes, depending on, again, how much time we're spending on our question A. So 45 to 50 minutes in terms of our question A, 30 to 35 minutes for our question B, and again, 75 to 80 minutes for our section 2, okay? Play around with it a little bit. You guys will know what suits you best. You do need 5 minutes. Arguably, for a lot of us, it's going to be about 3 or 4, but I will round it off nicely. We do need 5 minutes to scan over the paper. You can see there 165 out of 170. Now, I've asked you to play around with those times a little bit. 50 minutes, arguably 30, 35 minutes, 75, 80 minutes. Give yourself the 5 minutes, guys. Make sure that you dissect the paper. Now, what do I want you to do when dissecting the paper? I might throw it up on the board here for you, just to show you, because there's a couple of things that you should do when dissecting the paper, okay? Should stand to you. Let's say that we have 5 minutes to play around with this at the start, okay? What we're going to do is, and I know this sounds a little bit kind of, I suppose, different to what you might have been told, but again, when we go back to that little one-liner, almost like a mantra for paper 1 that we're going to play to our strengths, this should fit in nicely, okay? We're going to identify the theme, so figure out what the theme of the paper is first. As I said, I've already discussed where we will find that. Does that play a significant factor, I suppose, in terms of your response to the paper? Not massively, but it does give you an idea of what each individual text 1, text 2 and text 3, and what the core of that text might be about, and it might give you ideas as well about what you're going to do in terms of putting pen to paper for question B and your section 2, okay? So establish the theme. What is the theme of the entire paper? What am I dealing with? Now, we are going to choose question B first, okay? So we're going to choose question B, and that's 1 of 3 potential texts. Now, why are we going to do that? Well, the reason why we're going to do that is because we are going to play to our strengths, all right? Hypothetically, you might have a diary entry, you might have maybe a speech, you might have an article, you might have a podcast, an article for online publication, whatever it is. You immediately will gravitate to one that you know suits you best, because certainly by the end of these 6-7 weeks, you'll know which ones you want to go for and you'll want to gravitate towards. Say hypothetically you see a debate, language of persuasion, and you're like, right, I'm definitely taking that. Say we have text 1, text 2, and text 3, and we have an A question and a B question, A question, a B question, A question, and a B question. And that debate and this perfect question B question that you always wanted and hoped for is there, and you're selecting it there. Well, that means then that question A, text 2, is now gone, so you're dealing with the other 2 texts. You're dealing with text 1 that's left and text 3, okay? You are maximizing your grade by doing that, because you will know the structure, you'll know the techniques, you'll have really interesting little hooks and one-liners to draw the examiner in. You'll smash this out of the park, and then anybody who's able to take on a question A question, certainly will be after the first 4 weeks, 5 weeks of our time together. That's why we select our question B first, okay? Then, once that's done, we then choose our section 2, our essay, for the exact same reason, okay? So we'll have 1 out of the 7. I know there's that kind of idea, and you guys will be thinking about it now already in terms of 6th year. Maybe some of us will. in terms of the paper 2 moment. When you get your paper 2 script handed in front of you, you immediately flip it over, you look to the back of the page to see what 4 poets are there, and you think, yes, I have 2 or 3 of them, or 2 or 3 out of the 4, or even all 4. That's my favourite poet there. I know exactly how to take on that question. I have loads of pre-prepared material. Yes, that's the one I'm going to take on. I know that feeling because I was there once very, very long time ago now. I would argue that this is more of a wait and see moment. This is more of a kind of, oh my God, turn the back page over and flip to the back and see what we're looking at. Because obviously it's worth double the amount of our studied poet. Okay, so again, we're going to look to our section 2, we're going to look to our essay and see, right, what is the 1 out of these 7 that I'm taking on, alright? Looking for, is there a debate there, is there a speech there? Again, if you're the other way inclined, if you're like, look, I have an unbelievable short story that is there, prepared, it's incredibly malleable, kind of intentionally used, maybe part of it, some of it, maybe some of the characters, settings, exposition, all of this stuff that we'll talk about in a couple of weeks' time, you know, that's what we're looking for. That's what we do then, alright? So we choose our section 2 question, we choose our essay question, and we take one of those out of the 7. Then we go back, we choose our question A question. Again, at this stage we are dealing with one of 2, okay? So text 1 or text 3 in this case here, in this hypothetical scenario. And then we choose our question A question. But yet again, we play to our strengths. And I'm going to talk to you about how we do that with regards to a question A. We get what's called a text box at the start of the page, and it'll tell us, as in this extract from a novel, immediately light bulb, alarms go off. Novel. Novel is narrative and aesthetic language. Am I good at taking on those 2 particular types of categories of language? Do I know my narrative and aesthetic techniques? If so, yes. This suits me, brilliant, go for this. If not, right, what's my other question A? This extract is taken from a TED Talk based on education. The speaker is trying to convince convince the audience about how amazing the Leaving Cert is or how important state exams are. Brilliant. That's probably going to be, it's a TED Talk, it's a speech to be delivered to an audience. It's probably going to be persuasive. There's going to be elements of language of argument in there. Definitely informative language in there also. Am I really good at that? Yes. Right, I'm going to take on that question A. Okay? So again, we're going to play to our strengths. Once we've chosen our question A, you are going to start with your question A. Alright? So guys, this is the blueprint. This is your plan for your paper 1 material here, okay? This is how we begin our Leaving Cert, all right? In terms of our question selection, it may seem, again, as I said, really, really basic. But the individuals that stick to this, stick to the structure. As I said, it's incredibly structured, incredibly formulaic. We go about it this way, and then we start with our question A. Why do we start with question A? Well, because it's a little bit of reading. We're going to dissect our questions. We're going to dissect the text box as discussed, and the actual body of the text. We're getting our English brain ticking over. We're looking at some of the interesting pieces of vocab that are there. Nice little one-liners, turns of phrases. Again, everything that's up for grabs, guys. That's all up for grabs in our question A. All those little words, turns of phrases. Take them, use them, amalgamate them, paper 1, paper 2, wherever you see fit. Alright? That's what we start with. We start with question A. The other reason why we start with question A is because it's nice to kind of just slow it down a little bit, just relax a little bit in terms of, again, knowing that you are taking on the paper without have to frantically start writing a huge amount of material, okay? So that's why we start with question A as well. It's a great little blueprint, guys. It has worked for the last 13 years I've been teaching Leaving Cert English, okay? A lot of students really gravitate towards it, find it very, very useful, okay? So guys, that's our little blueprint in terms of our paper 1. In terms of what we should be doing within the first 5 minutes of taking on this task, all right?